So I guess that segues nicely into transpose. So using everything we've learned so far, let's go ahead and do brush, B, we can hit I, and then insert mesh multi-parts is M. Then we can hit M, and let's go ahead and let's grab the female full leg here. Now if we drag on one side, you're going to see that the legs are kind of backwards. I'm going to drag on this side, and we're going to need to rotate these things around. So that leads us up to the move, scale, and rotate up here. So if you hover over these, you're going to see that move is W, scale is E, rotate is R. So I'm just going to hit W, and that's going to bring up the move widget. What the widget is this gizmo here. I should call it a gizmo. And that is our 3D gizmo. This is new to ZBrush Core. So because we're in move mode, I think the default is basically move. So we can use these corner objects to kind of move our object around. You can also use these arrows if you want to lock it in Y. So remember, when we were looking at the floor and Z is forward, Y is up, and X is this way, and X is red, Y is green, Z is blue. Same thing in here. You can move it here in the X, and then Z out, and then Y up and down. Or you can click this middle area. Oops, that's scale. You can click one of these corners, and that'll just kind of move it along your camera plane. So depending on where your camera is, if you're looking down at your object, you can grab one of these corners and move it around this way. You can bring your camera this way, and now you're moving it along that camera plane, basically. So let's say we want to move these into place. I'm going to move them down here a little bit. And if I want to rotate them, I can either hit R to rotate, but it doesn't really change our gizmo because you can do all three at once. So basically I can grab this rotate, and I can rotate it around the Z, and then the green I can rotate it around. You can see as I rotate it around, the legs are backwards. So let's see if I can fix that here. Going to undo back. So if I drag it on that side now, I'm going to hit, W-E-R, doesn't really matter, R to rotate. And now when I rotate them around, they'll be on the correct side. So keep in mind. Also, while we're in gizmo mode, you also have a rotate around a camera axis. So depending on where my camera is, this gray rotate right here. Now if I cross over and then let go and then cross back over, it's going to get sticky. So make sure you don't cross over the back line if you can help it, or the midline here. You can kind of keep them away. So we'll kind of put the legs in here, and because we can move, scale, and rotate all at once, we can kind of just go in here. And scale is, we have uniform scale, which we accidentally did earlier, so we can uniformly scale the middle one, or we can scale non-uniformly. And basically all that means is if you scale non-uniformly in the X, you're only scaling in one axis, or in one axis in the Z, or one axis in the Y, or if you're doing all three at once, it's called a uniform scale, so they're all scaling at once. So it's maintaining its form, but you're just scaling it up and down, basically. So once we have these positioned in our body here, we can kind of just go in here, and we've rotated around, and we've moved them, so we can control drag again, and now it's Dynamesh. Now if I want to brush again, I need to go back into draw mode. So if I hover over draw, you're going to see that's Q. I'll hit Q. It goes into my last brush, which is an insert brush. I don't want to do that, so I'm going to go back into my brush. I'll hit B, S, my standard brush, T, or just select it, and now I'm back in my standard brush, and I can just go ahead and just start sculpting this stuff around. All right, let's go a little bit deeper into transposing, or this move, scale, and rotate gizmo. So I'm going to go back in my insert multi-mesh primitives here, my brush. I'm going to grab a cylinder. I'm going to drag that out, and I can drag back in and make it kind of a longer, thinner cylinder here. Now if I want to see this entire cylinder, I'm going to have to move it out of my object. So I'm going to hit W to go into my gizmo. And it's already centered this pivot right on my object. And you're going to see I have the Z, along the Z is object oriented, which basically means this cylinder has its own Z forward, X symmetry, and Y up and down. If I want to, I can hit this reset mesh orientation, and that's actually going to throw my object completely off. What I'd rather do is, if I just want to change the pivot, I can unlock it and then hit reset mesh orientation. What that basically does is go out of object space. So remember when I first dragged this object out, this blue line was going straight out of this line here. Now it's set to my world, which is basically, if you look at the bottom middle here and with the floor on, Z is straight out this way, Y is straight up this way, and X is this way. That's what I've reset it to. If I still have this unlocked. So basically when I have this unlocked, that means I am just doing pivot operations. So if I just click on a face, if I turn on polyframe here, and I click on a face here, it's just going to push along the face I click on. So that's setting that Z to be oriented in the same direction as that face. So if I want to move this cylinder along this flat surface here, all I gotta do is tap on it, and that resets my pivot. So now X is going straight down following the orientation of this flat face I clicked on up here. So if I turn that back to a locked icon just by tapping on it, I can now move straight in that direction based on the surface normal or the direction that that flat face is going in. Super duper useful. Now if I want to temporarily, like if I'm moving stuff around and I want to rotate this thing in space or rotate it this way, and it's like, you know what, I want to do a little bit of pivot moving, all I have to do is hold down Alt, and it's going to toggle the unlock temporarily. So I can be moving and rotating and hold down Alt and tap, and that'll go ahead and set my orientation. Hold down Alt and tap, that'll set my orientation. So I don't have to go up here and click unlock every single time. All I got to do is tap Alt, and I can go into pivot mode. So again, I can Alt tap here, I can hit reset, and that'll go ahead and move my object around, which I don't want to do. So I'm going to hold down, I'm going to unlock, and then reset, and that'll reset my pivot, or my pivot orientation to be the same as the world. If I click this icon here, this goes to Unmasked Mesh Center. So basically, everything else is masked. What's unmasked is my object here, and I'm across X-axis. I have transform. I'm going to drag this over here. I have my transform activate symmetry on. So basically, each side has its own center pivot. So if I click that, it's going to go to the center of this object. If I deactivate symmetry and I click go to the center of my object, it treats both of these as one object, which means the center of that object is going to be in the center of both of them. Just something to keep in mind. It's going to activate symmetry, go to the center of the unmasked object across symmetry. So now it's in the center of this object here. If I click this home, that's going to go to axis, and that's going to set my pivot back to the world axis, which is right in the middle of the object here. So in this case, if I start rotating, it's probably not going to do much because I have X symmetry turned on. If I deactivate symmetry, now I can rotate these. I'll go ahead and lock it back up, and now I can rotate these this way and this way. If I activate symmetry, it's going to break symmetry, which I don't want. So in that case, I'm probably just going to reset it back to the individual object centers, and now I can just use screen space rotation or the actual Z rotation of the object, or I can hold down Alt and tap the end of that object, and now I can move this in and out as much as I want to. I can rotate it around using screen space or X or the screen space move if I want to, and just kind of orient those. And once I'm happy, I can control drag again. Those are Dynamesh together. I can turn polyframe off, and now again I can hold down shift and smooth all this stuff, go into my pinch these up together, go into my move brush here, and just kind of sculpt to my heart's content.